Everyone knows Sparta. 300 warriors, King Leonidas, the greatest soldiers who ever lived. But here is what nobody tells you. The entire citizen population of Sparta at its peak, 9,000 people. The population of a small town. By the time of Alexander the Great, 2,400. 100 years later, 700. Then, gone. The most feared military city in ancient Greece did not fall in battle. It did not lose to some great invader. It simply ran out of Spartans. How does that happen? That is exactly what we are going to find out. First, forget everything you think you know about Sparta. The Sparta from the Iliad, the one whose king lost his wife to Paris and started the Trojan War, that Sparta almost certainly never existed. Archaeologists have found no evidence of it whatsoever. The real Sparta was born much later, after the Bronze Age collapsed. Around 3,000 years ago, something went catastrophically wrong across the entire ancient world. Civilizations that had existed for centuries disappeared within decades. Egypt survived, but barely. Greece did not survive at all. The Greek Dark Ages began, so dark that even writing disappeared and had to be reinvented from scratch. For several centuries, power passed to small tribal warlords called Dorians, who arrived from the north and enslaved whatever local population remained. Sparta emerged from this chaos around the 8th century, roughly the same age as ancient Rome. It started as 4 small villages in the valley of the Eurotas River. When they merged, they faced one immediate problem. 2 of the villages had their own rulers. Nobody wanted to give up power. Nobody wanted to lose. So they kept both kings, 2 kings, simultaneously, for the entire history of Sparta. This sounds like a recipe for constant civil war. Somehow it worked. And from this strange beginning, Sparta began expanding, conquering neighbors, absorbing some, destroying others, building an empire on the backs of the people they enslaved. Which brings us to the foundation of everything Sparta was. Sparta had a problem. It was surrounded by other people who owned land that Sparta wanted, people who had armies that stood in the way. The solution was simple. Take everything. Kill everyone who resisted. Enslave everyone who survived. The conquered people of Sparta fell into 2 categories. The first were the Perioikoi, cities and tribes that surrendered without too much fighting. They kept their local laws, kept their customs. Spartan garrisons moved in. Taxes were collected. They fought in Spartan wars when required. In exchange, they were left, mostly, alone. They also did something that actual Spartan citizens were legally forbidden from doing. They worked. Trade, crafts, shipbuilding, everything that kept an economy functioning. The Perioikoi did all of it because Spartan citizens were not allowed to. A true Spartan had one job: war. Everything else was beneath him. The second category was far worse. The Helots, cities that resisted, populations that fought back. When Sparta finally broke through their walls, the people were not killed. They were redistributed across the countryside and assigned to Spartan citizen families as state-owned slaves. Not personal slaves, state slaves. A Spartan citizen could not sell his Helots or free them. He simply received their labor. The state owned everything. Each citizen family received 5 or 6 Helot families who were required to provide a fixed portion of their harvest. Everything above that fixed amount, the Helots could keep for themselves. Which sounds almost reasonable until you understand the rest of it. Every single year, the Spartan government formally declared war on the Helots. Not metaphorically, an actual official declaration of war against their own slaves. The reason was legal. Under Greek religious tradition, Killing someone during peacetime, even a slave, could bring divine punishment. But during war? During war, anything goes. So Sparta stayed permanently at war with its own workforce, just in case. And then there was the Crypteia. Once a year, young Spartan warriors, 18 years old, armed only with daggers, were sent out into the countryside at night. No food, no shelter, no support. Their mission was to hunt helots. Not all helots, specifically the strongest, the most respected, the ones who might organize resistance, the ones who seemed like they were thinking too much. If a young Spartan killed one of these people, he was praised. If the helot fought back and killed the Spartan, that was also considered acceptable. A warrior who could not handle an unarmed farmer was no use to Sparta anyway. This was not considered cruel. This was considered education. Here is the number that explains everything about why Sparta eventually collapsed. By the time of the Peloponnesian War in the 5th century, the Spartan army was already 80% perioikoi and freed helots. 80%. The legendary Spartan army, the most feared force in the ancient world, was mostly not Spartans. And unlike Rome, which solved this exact problem by offering citizenship to conquered peoples and built an empire that lasted centuries, Sparta refused. No matter how long you fought for Sparta, no matter how many battles you won, no matter how many times you saved the city with your own blood, if you were not born a Spartan citizen, you would never become one. That decision was the beginning of the end. But the demographic collapse had another cause entirely, and it started at birth. Every insane thing about Sparta came from one source: the laws of Lycurgus. Lycurgus was supposedly a traveler, a philosopher, a man who had seen the world, India, Carthage, Spain, and came home to find Sparta in chaos. Kings drowning in corruption, the poor getting poorer, the rich getting richer, everything falling apart. So he seized power and rewrote everything. Then he announced he was leaving on a journey and made every Spartan swear to obey his laws until he returned. Then he walked into the mountains and starved himself to death, so the oath would last forever. That is the legend. The reality is that Lycurgus almost certainly never existed. Most modern historians believe he was originally a local god whose story was gradually rewritten into a human as religious belief faded. The laws were real. The man probably was not. But the laws were something else entirely. First, money. Sparta had currency, but not gold, not silver, not anything you could actually use outside Sparta. Iron bars, heavy, useless, worthless to anyone beyond the city walls. If you wanted to make a significant purchase, you did not bring a wallet. You brought a cart. External trade was effectively impossible, which was the point. No foreign merchants, no outside ideas, no exposure to how other people lived, no temptation. Second, food. Spartan men were forbidden from eating at home. Every male citizen over 20 was assigned to a group of 16 men called a common table. They ate together every day in public dining halls. The menu was fixed. Black broth made from pork, blood, lentils, vinegar, and salt. Barley bread, a small piece of meat, some olives, figs. The black broth became famous across Greece, not for being good, for being aggressively, legendarily terrible. The joke was that Spartans went to war willingly because at least in the field, someone fed them real food. To join a common table, every existing member had to approve you unanimously. The vote was simple. Each man dropped a piece of bread into a jar as it passed around. Round bread meant yes. Squeezed flat meant no. One flat piece, and you were out. These tables were not just dining groups. they were military units. The men who ate together fought together, and they watched each other constantly. If someone broke the rules, ate at home, complained about the food, showed weakness of any kind, the group publicly mocked and humiliated him until he fell back in line. Social pressure as law enforcement. It worked surprisingly well. Third, land. All land in Sparta belonged to the state. Every male citizen received an equal plot at birth, or rather, once the elders decided not to throw him off a cliff, which we will get to, and that plot could not be sold, traded, or expanded. A Spartan citizen could not be richer than his neighbor, could not build a bigger house, could not display wealth in any form. Even if you somehow accumulated gold from military campaigns, you were legally required to live exactly like the poorest man in the city. And overseeing all of this were the ephors, 5 priests elected annually who answered to no one. They watched the kings. They watched the generals. They watched every citizen. They communicated directly with the gods, or claimed to, and could declare any king unfit for divine reasons at any moment. One Spartan king was officially fined by the ephors for marrying a woman who was too short, because a short woman might produce small soldiers. The ephors had their own private army of 300 men. Each soldier served exactly 1 year at age 30 and was then replaced. In battle, they fought at the center of the Spartan formation. In peacetime, they functioned as something between a secret police and a religious inquisition. They could not be overruled. They could not be prosecuted. They selected their own successors through elections they themselves supervised. Sparta called this system democracy. Plato, who genuinely admired Sparta, described the ideal this way: no one should ever be without a commander. In serious matters and in play, no one should act according to their own judgment. Even in the smallest things, a person must stand ready to follow their leader. The human soul must learn to be completely incapable of acting alone. He meant this as a compliment. And this was the world every Spartan child was born into. Being born in Sparta was already a gamble, not because of poverty or disease, because of a committee. Every newborn was brought before the city elders. They examined the child, assessed its health, its proportions, its potential as a future soldier. If they approved, the child lived. If they did not, the child was thrown into a ravine called the apothete. This was not considered cruel. This was considered practical. Sparta had no use for people who could not fight. Feeding a child who would never be a warrior was simply a waste of state resources. Even this system had exceptions. One Spartan king named Agus was born lame and weak, and somehow survived the inspection. He turned out to be one of the wisest rulers in Spartan history. The elders did not mention this often. If you survived infancy, you had exactly 7 years before the state took you away from your family permanently. At 7 years old, every Spartan boy was placed into a training group called anagoge. These were not schools in any recognizable sense. They were closer to a cross between a military boot camp and a controlled experiment in how much a child could endure before breaking. The groups were called packs. Each pack was led by a young warrior in his 20s. Below him were the bulls, older boys selected by the children themselves to keep order within the group. The bulls were not chosen for wisdom or kindness. They were chosen because they were the most aggressive, the ones who could make the others comply through physical force. Beating younger children into submission was not punished. It was encouraged. The state provided almost nothing. From age 12, boys were given 1 cloak per year. No shoes, no blankets, no additional clothing, regardless of weather. They slept on reeds they collected themselves from riverbanks. On cold nights, they slept on nettles for warmth. The nettles stung. The stinging was the point. It created the sensation of heat. Food was deliberately insufficient, not accidentally, deliberately. The logic was that hunger made children resourceful, so the boys were expected to steal whatever else they needed. Theft was not just permitted, it was celebrated. With one condition: if you stole successfully, you were praised. If you were caught, you were beaten. Not for stealing, for being incompetent enough to get caught. There was a famous story, almost certainly a legend, but believed completely, about a Spartan boy who stole a fox and hid it under his cloak. When soldiers stopped to question him, the fox began tearing through his stomach. The boy said nothing, showed nothing, stood completely still while the animal chewed through him. He died before he would admit what he had hidden. This was held up as the ideal Spartan child. Education beyond this was minimal by design. Reading, basic arithmetic, music, because military signals were communicated through flutes and marching was easier with a rhythm. Everything else was considered dangerous. Philosophy made men soft. Literature gave them ideas. Art was a distraction from the only thing that mattered. The conversations that did happen were carefully controlled. Children were told daily about the greatness of Sparta, about the weakness of every other Greek city, about how Athenians were lazy and corrupt and unworthy of being called men. No Spartan citizen was permitted to travel to other cities without permission from the ephors. Permission was granted only to the most ideologically reliable warriors. The official reason was security. The real reason was obvious. If a Spartan soldier spent time in Athens and saw that people there lived in comfortable houses, ate good food, enjoyed art and theater and philosophy, he might come home with questions. Questions were the most dangerous thing in Sparta. So the boys trained, fought each other, stole food, slept on nettles, were beaten for weakness, and praised for endurance. Until they were 18, at which point they were considered ready for the crypteia, the night hunts, armed with a dagger, alone in the countryside, hunting the people who grew their food. By 20, they were soldiers. By 30, they were full citizens, if they survived that long. Sparta had the most controlling government in the ancient world. It told you what to eat, where to sleep, who to fight, how to dress, what to think. So naturally, it also controlled who you slept with. And this is where Sparta gets genuinely strange. Because the same city that regulated every aspect of human existence was simultaneously the most sexually permissive society in ancient Greece. And the same people who imposed all these rules spent considerable energy accusing everyone else of being depraved. Let us start with women. In every other Greek city, a woman's life was simple. Stay home, obey your husband, produce children. Do not be seen in public more than necessary. Spartan women were completely different. From childhood, girls were organized into athletic groups just like boys. They ran, they wrestled, they threw javelins and discus. They trained their bodies with the same seriousness that boys trained for war. The reasoning was purely practical. Strong mothers produce strong soldiers. A weak woman cannot give birth to a warrior. Therefore, women must be strong. The training happened in public, mixed public. Young men and women competed alongside each other. The young men were naked, standard practice for Greek athletics. The young women wore extremely short tunics that exposed their legs during movement, sometimes nothing at all. Festival days in Sparta featured processions of naked young men and women performing gymnastic displays together in front of the entire city. The rest of Greece was scandalized. The Spartans could not understand why. After marriage, Spartan women ran their households with complete authority. Their husbands were in barracks for the first 10 years of marriage, sometimes longer. The wife controlled everything. the land, the helots, the finances, every practical decision. This gave Spartan women a level of economic power and social authority that existed nowhere else in Greece. It also gave them something else: opportunity. Because when your husband is permanently away at war, and you are running a large estate with significant resources and considerable free time, certain situations arise. Sparta handled this with characteristic directness. If a Spartan man could not produce children, or if a woman wanted children from a man with better physical qualities, the husband could officially arrange for another man to father children with his wife. Children from these arrangements were completely legitimate. The official justification was that children belonged to Sparta, not to individual families. Therefore, the genetic quality of the father mattered far more than the identity of the father. Nobody asked the women whether this framing was convenient for them. There were also formal regulations governing relationships between Spartan citizens and helots. Such relationships were officially disapproved of, but they happened constantly, and the rules around them were specific enough to suggest they were considered normal enough to require management. And then there was the practice that most disturbed the rest of Greece. In the training packs, relationships between adult warriors and boys from 12 years old upward were not just permitted, they were expected. A boy who reached 15 without an adult male mentor who gave him gifts and attention was considered unusual, something to be concerned about. The official explanation was military. These relationships created loyalty between warriors and the next generation. The younger learned correct behavior from the older. The bond formed in this way made men fight harder to protect each other in battle. After 18, the relationships became forbidden. Adult men with other adult men, punishable. The specific arrangement with adolescents, educational. Sparta saw no contradiction here, and continued to lecture the rest of Greece about moral degeneracy. The combination of all these factors created something remarkable. Spartan women had more freedom than anywhere in Greece, more economic power, more social authority, more sexual autonomy. And they used it. Which meant that a significant portion of children born in Sparta were born outside official marriages to citizen fathers, which meant those children could not be full citizens, which meant the citizen population kept shrinking. Which brings us to why Sparta died. For roughly 4 centuries the system held, barely, uncomfortably, with constant internal pressure and a demographic problem that everyone could see and nobody could solve. Then came the Peloponnesian War. In 431 years before our era, Sparta and Athens, the two dominant powers in Greece, finally went to war with each other directly. It had been coming for decades. Everyone knew it was coming. The only question was when. The war lasted 30 years. Sparta won, and winning destroyed it completely. Here is what happened. 30 years of war meant 30 years of Spartan soldiers living outside Sparta, traveling across Greece, seeing how other people lived, eating real food, sleeping in actual beds, encountering philosophy and art and theater and commerce, and all the things that Lycurgus had spent centuries trying to keep away from his citizens. They saw that the rest of Greece was not actually drowning in weakness and depravity. It was just nicer. And then the money arrived. Sparta had made an alliance with Persia during the war. Persia contributed 5,000 talents of silver to build a Spartan fleet. 5,000 talents. 126 tons of silver. Some of it went to ships. Some of it went into the pockets of Spartan commanders. One admiral was later caught stealing from the war funds. He was the one who got caught. Then Athens fell, and its treasury came with it. The wealth of nearly all of Greece flowed into a city that had been operating on iron bars and black broth for 400 years. Even the ephors could not hold the line against that much money. Gold and silver coins were officially permitted in Sparta. That single decision unraveled everything. Trade returned. With trade came merchants. With merchants came foreign ideas. With foreign ideas came the creeping realization that maybe, just maybe, Lycurgus had not actually discovered the only correct way for humans to live. Then came the second blow. A law was passed allowing Spartan citizens to gift their land to other people. In practice, this meant land could now be bought and sold. Within a generation, significant portions of Spartan land had concentrated in the hands of the wealthy. Citizens who lost their land also lost their citizen status, because citizenship required owning land and contributing to the common tables. Former warriors became non-citizens overnight. The citizen population, which had already been shrinking for structural reasons, now collapsed rapidly. By the time the Macedonian king Antigonus arrived to finally take the city, there were fewer than 700 full citizens left. Not 7,000. Not even 1,000. 700. Less than a single military battalion. Antigonus took Sparta without serious resistance. The last Spartan king fled to Egypt, where he took his own life. 4 centuries of the most disciplined military society in human history ended not with a final heroic battle, but with a city that simply no longer had enough people to defend itself. And here is the thing that makes this more than just an interesting historical footnote. The system that killed Sparta was not introduced by enemies. It was not imposed by conquerors. It was not the result of some catastrophic military defeat. The system that killed Sparta was Sparta. The iron money kept the economy frozen and dependent on slave labor that could not be sustained as the citizen population shrank. The common tables required contributions that impoverished citizens could no longer afford. The citizenship rules excluded the very people, the perioikoi, the freed helots, the sons of non-citizen fathers, who might have saved the city if they had been given a reason to save it. Rome faced the exact same problem and solved it by extending citizenship, by making the people it conquered feel like Romans, by giving them something to fight for. Sparta looked at the same problem and chose tradition instead. And tradition, in this case, was a very slow way to disappear. So what do we do with Sparta? Because here's the complicated part. Everything about Sparta was genuinely insane. Children torn from their families at 7, babies inspected by committees and thrown off cliffs, teenagers hunting slaves at night as a graduation requirement, a currency system so deliberately useless it required a cart for basic purchases, a government that told you what to eat, where to sleep, who to marry, and how to feel about all of it. By any reasonable modern standard, Sparta was a nightmare. And yet, for 4 centuries, it worked. Not comfortably, not happily, not in any way that a person living inside it would have described as a good life, but it worked. The Spartan army was genuinely the most effective fighting force in the ancient world. The society was genuinely more equal than anything around it. Women had more freedom and more power in Sparta than anywhere else in Greece. The system produced warriors of extraordinary discipline and courage. Thermopylae was real. Those 300 men really did hold a mountain pass against an enormous Persian army until every single one of them was dead. That actually happened. So the question is not whether Sparta was admirable or monstrous. It was clearly both simultaneously. The real question is what killed it. And the answer is not the Macedonians, not the Persians, not Athens, not any external enemy at all. Sparta was killed by the gap between what it claimed to be and what it actually was. It claimed to be a society of absolute equals, But some citizens were always richer than others. It claimed to produce the most disciplined warriors in existence, but by the end, its army was mostly non-Spartans. It claimed to be morally superior to the rest of Greece, while doing things the rest of Greece found genuinely shocking. Every system built on the idea that human beings can be completely controlled, that individuality can be eliminated, that people can be made to think identically, that a perfect social order can be maintained forever through strict enough rules, contains within itself the same flaw. People. People are inconveniently complicated. They fall in love with the wrong people. They want more than their fixed allocation of barley and black broth. They look across the border and notice that the neighbors seem to be having a better time. Sparta tried to solve this with iron bars and nightly hunts and committees that decided whether your baby deserved to live. It worked for 4 centuries. Then it ran out of Spartans. Plato, who genuinely admired Sparta and used it as the model for his ideal society, wrote that the human soul must learn to be completely incapable of acting alone. He meant it as a design goal. It turned out to be a death sentence. The first utopia in human history destroyed itself from the inside, not because it was too weak, because it was too rigid, because it could not adapt, could not absorb new people, could not tolerate the basic human desire to occasionally eat something other than black broth and make your own decisions. Every totalitarian system that came after Sparta made the same promises: equality, strength, unity, discipline. Every single one of them ended the same way. Not with a great final battle, just with fewer and fewer true believers, until one day there were not enough left to matter.